Hopefully we can go. All right, finally made it. Thanks, guys, for hanging with me there. Just going to give it a moment for people to join us. I know I see a lot of comments. People are concerned and worried.
I know I see a lot of comments.
Oops.
People are concerned and worried. I know I see a lot of comments.
So, just good to see everybody. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Total Todd. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you and love you. Olivia, Whispers from the Universe. Tanique, Red Spirit, Whispers from the Universe. Alicia, Farah, Jessica, Wake Up to Yourself. Colleen, thank you for joining. Cyborg, always good to see you. Vocal Tapestry, Yellow Test, Just Me, thank you for sticking with me. I just wanted to start by saying that I learned a lot from my last live. I had a chance to discuss the election results. The reason I did my live last week was because I was getting so many posts, so many messages where people were really struggling. People were saying they were suicidal, that they had really terrible views of what was happening in the future. There was a lot of fear. And I went on there to discuss it. I shared my own beliefs. And as I've always said, this is a safe space. I don't want my politics to crowd into my meditations or my teachings, but we're in a moment right now where we're being played. There are outside forces that are trying to divide us. And it's important that you understand that this is simply not how it works. There is so much more that we have in common than we don't. Let me see. I'm going to pull this up here. And I started to talk to people. There were simple people that came on and said, Brian, I'm subscribing from you. I'm so disappointed in you. I'm so angry with you. So I tried to engage with those people. These were friends of mine, people that have watched my videos, that have meditated with me. And so it was difficult for me to see that people we're having such incredibly strong emotions about what I was saying. And I learned a lot from talking to them. I learned a lot about myself. And one of the things I found is there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And when I would talk to them, there's a lot of stuff that they didn't know. And I realized that we've been in an environment that sort of created a situation where we are divided. A lot of outside forces from this planet and within this planet, outside countries want us to be divided because when we come together, we're dangerous. I just want to ask, do you know that moment when you're walking down the street and suddenly you meet someone's eyes and there's this split second, this tiny fragment of time where you see them and you really see them and something strange happens? You recognize something. Maybe it's the way that they're rushing, just like you rush. Maybe it's that they look worried, like you look worried. Maybe they're wearing a shirt just like the one you wore yesterday. Maybe it's their smile, the kind that you give when you're lost in a happy thought. What's wild is every single day you're surrounded by mirrors, not the kind that you hang on the walls, but I'm talking about human mirrors. That person who cut you off in traffic, that was you last week when you were running late to pick up your kid. And that teenager being too loud at the restaurant, that was you when you were young and you felt invincible. And that older person taking too long at the checkout, that's you in the future dealing with a world that seems to move too fast. I want you to think about all the times that you've experienced a random act of kindness from a complete stranger, or the times you've helped someone you didn't know for no reason other than it felt right. These moments happen everywhere all the time. These beautiful breaks in the illusion where you drop the stranger label and you become humans helping humans. They don't want that. When I say they, and I put that in parentheses because we're all one, but they don't want that. What if I told you that feeling, that recognition, that connection is not just a nice moment, but it's actually showing us something very profound about who we are and how we've been seeing the world all wrong? What if every person that you've been treating as another is actually you? I want you to think about that. And that's what I want to explore today. This is an activation. I have done a number of activations on my channel, these very similar to meditations or hypnosis, but all you have to do is listen to me. And I'm using words and patterns of language in my speech. And my goal is for us to come together. And it seems impossible. I had people on both sides come to me that were angry with me calling for unity and the oneness. I had people from the left saying, "How dare you ask for me to unify when these people have said horrible things to me, and there's so many terrible things that are going to happen." And I've had people on the right say, "How dare you call for unity? Those Democrats are terrible. Those are horrible people." And I couldn't understand. There's a bridge in realities. One side believes one thing, one side believes another. And the more and more I talked to people and engaged with them, I found there was a lot more in common. And so I am struggling with this because I believe that everybody is a hero in their own story, and that deep down everybody has the same intentions. They want the world to improve and good things to happen. This is not some abstract philosophy when I call for unity, but everyday moments, you're going to start to suddenly see yourself in everyone else, because once you recognize this, once you really get it, everything changes. The way you walk down the street changes, the way you handle conflicts changes, the way that you look at Democrats and Republicans changes. Everyone is you pushed out. And we want to live by this credo. And it starts with a simple moment of recognition. That split second where you catch someone's eye and think, hey, that's me. Now, I want you to think about the stories you tell yourself. One of the chapters in my book, Activate Your Power, Activate Your Unlimited Power, talks about the stories that you tell yourself. Because we're all, separation begins in these stories we tell ourselves. From the moment we wake up, we're sorting people into boxes: liberal, conservative, rich, poor, educated, uneducated, us versus them, my people versus those people, right versus wrong. We are constantly putting people in boxes: Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, fascist, socialist. We do it without thinking. That driver isn't just a person heading home, they're a bad driver. That person with different political views isn't just another human trying to make sense of the world, they're one of them. That colleague isn't just someone doing their best, they're difficult. I'm finding in my discussions with people, and I'm honored because I have a chance right now in this group. We have people from both sides of the political persuasion. Everybody exists in their echo chambers. So a lot of times when you go on a podcast or watch a YouTube video, everybody's agreeing with each other. I'm in a unique situation because I've kept this as a sort of safe space where I get a chance to talk to people on both sides. I'm not here to make a political argument with you. I'm not debating politics with you. I'm debating something that's even more important, and that is that we have more in common than we have apart. We have these categories we give to everybody, and there's a cost to these comfortable categories. Every time we put someone in a box, we put ourselves in one too. Every boundary we create between us and them is actually a wall we build around ourselves. Every label we stick on someone else becomes a limitation on our own understanding. Think about how many amazing conversations have never happened because we decided we already knew what those people think. How many potential friendships never formed because we decided someone wasn't our kind of person? How many solutions to our biggest problems have not been found because we decided certain people couldn't possibly have anything valuable to offer because of their political beliefs, because of the color of their skin, because of their gender or culture? The truth is, these boundaries we create are not protecting us. They're imprisoning us. They're not making our world bigger. They're making it smaller. Every time we say, I could never understand them, they could never understand me, we're not describing reality. We're creating it. We're choosing it. And the most fascinating part, the moment we start seeing through these artificial boundaries, we discover something incredible. The very people that we've been keeping at arm's length are often the ones holding pieces of ourselves that we have not yet recognized. For a moment, I want you to become aware of something that is an absolute truth that I've seen in my meditations, that I've read about from others, and that is there was a time long ago when we knew each other. The person that can hear me right now, we're best friends. We knew each other at the beginning of time. We're immortal souls. We have lived on thousands of planets. We share so much more than you can imagine. We decided to separate ourselves, to create the veil around us so that we wouldn't remember, so that we could learn more about ourselves. Because something is even more powerful. Before we started to know each other way back then, we were all one being that separated ourselves into many. We are best friends. We are all soulmates. I understand the argument that everybody has a soulmate, but we're all soulmates. We come from the same source. If I got a chance to hang out with you and got to know you and understand you, if you completely believed something differently than me, I bet you eventually we would find some common ground because deep down we want the same thing. We want peace, we want joy, we want happiness, we want love. We see it differently. What I found in the last week in going through the comments, and let me just say something. Yes, I deleted some comments, but many I didn't delete. And there were so many comments, I just simply couldn't read them all. But I found that we were coming from completely different worlds. There were people saying things that were just completely different realities than mine. And I couldn't even communicate because they were saying things I had never heard. And when I would say something, they had never heard these things. So, why is that? And that is because the world is actively trying to separate us because something powerful happens when we come together. And that is a part of this New Earth process when we're going to get to know ourselves better. We're going to become aware of each other's skeletons in our closets, the flaws that we have. What really saddened me when I read through comments is that people implied I had some sort of agenda, that I had some sort of secret thing and I was trying to do something. I'm not. You guys have followed me for thousands of videos. I'm still the same Brian. There's nothing that's changed. I want the same things. I want you to learn how to create your reality. I want to free you from the bounds of this world so that you can do whatever you want. And I teach love. I teach us to come together. And I have been wrong. And I've talked about when I've been wrong. And I'm constantly learning and evolving. And this has been an important catalyst for me to learn about how to deal with everyone. Sorry, I got my phone on today. So, one of those things that happens with the live. But I want you to be aware of the story that you're telling yourself about yourself day, keeping up these walls. We're constantly on guard, watching what we say, filtering our thoughts, deciding who's safe and who isn't. We're running these complex calculations in our heads about who belongs in which category and how we should act around them. And while we're spending all this energy keeping people out, what are we missing? While we're constantly blocking people, the conversation that could have changed everything doesn't happen. That connection that could have opened up new doors, that perspective that could have solved the very problem keeping us up at night. We're like islands building higher and higher seawalls, not realizing that we're cutting ourselves off from the very resources that we need to thrive. Every bit of energy we spend maintaining separation is energy that we're not spending on creation, on innovation, on actually solving our shared problems. When life strips away our carefully constructed categories, when real crisis hits, when natural disasters strike, when shared challenges crisis, people don't ask about political views before helping someone out of a burning building. They don't check social status before sharing the last bottle of water. They don't confirm religious beliefs before offering shelter from a storm. A lot of the conversations I had were how could you try to find unity with somebody that believes in that or voted for somebody that said that? And oftentimes, when I would talk to someone else, they weren't voting for that. They didn't understand that. Maybe they didn't read about it or they had a completely different interpretation. Everybody's in their own little world. In those moments when we find that unity, we remember the truth that we've always known. We all laugh the same way when we're truly happy. We all cry the same tears when we're hurt. We all feel that same knot in our stomach when we're afraid. We all want to be seen, to be heard, to matter. We all need to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel like we belong. And if everybody got a chance to go into someone else's mind and really know where they were coming from, their background, their family, what they're living in their lives, we would totally understand why they voted that way, why they believe that way. That parent worrying about their kid's future, that's not a liberal parent or a conservative parent. That's just a parent. That person lying awake at night wondering if they're good enough, they're not doing it in any particular language from any particular background. They're just human. That moment of pure joy when something amazing happens. It doesn't care what tax bracket you're in or what neighborhood you live in. These aren't just nice ideas. This is the raw reality under our constructed divisions. Everything else, all these categories, all of them are just separations. These aren't just nice ideas. This is it, the raw reality that we live in. So I want to talk about what's happening right now in real time on every phone, on every screen. Have you noticed how social media seems designed to push us apart? This is not an accident, it's an engineered reality. A number of studies have come out that Russia, China, North Korea, and other agencies have actively been creating divisions. For instance, during the last election and this one, there were protests that would be set up on Facebook by Russia. They would have a protest for Black Lives Matter on the same corner, and then somebody else would set up, the same group would set up a protest against and for Black Lives Matter. And they would come together and then they would fight and there would be a riot, right? They want us to be divided. These outside forces do not care about Democrat or Republican. They're utilizing the social media to separate us. Think about how these systems work. An algorithm notices that you're angry about something. Maybe it's a local issue. Maybe it's national politics. Suddenly, your feed fills with more content about that issue, not just any content. You're seeing the most extreme versions, the most inflammatory takes. The posts are specifically designed to make you even angrier. Meanwhile, someone on the other side of that same issue is getting their own personalized feed. They're seeing different extreme content, different inflammatory posts, different conspiracy theories, all of each other that don't actually exist. You're not seeing real people anymore. You're seeing curated caricatures. The algorithm is literally creating two different realities, two different versions of the world, and then convincing each side that the other is living in a completely separate universe. And the masterstroke is they've got us doing their work for them. Every time we share that angry post, every time we respond to that inflammatory content, every time we fall into that carefully laid trap of us versus them thinking, we're strengthening those artificial divisions. We're literally helping build the walls between us. But here's what they don't want you to realize: the very fact that these tactics work proves how deeply connected we actually are. Think about it. Why do they need sophisticated systems to keep us apart? Because our natural state is to come together. They have to work this hard to create division because unity is our default setting. The next time you see something that makes you instantly angry about those people, pause. Ask yourself, who benefits from my anger right now? Who profits from this division? What if this isn't actually about left versus right, but about up versus down? What if the real division isn't between different groups of people, but between those who profit from our separation and those who would thrive from our unity? Remember, the same tools used to divide us can be used to connect us. Every time you recognize manipulation, every time you see through the illusion, every time you choose to see the human being behind the label, you are breaking free from the engineered separation. You're returning to what's real, our fundamental connection to each other. Something I want to talk about that's important, and I've mentioned it in other episodes, but it's the mirror principle. And once you understand it, you can never unsee it. Everyone you encounter is you pushed out into different circumstances, different experiences, different stories. I know that sounds simple, maybe even obvious at first, but let's go deeper. The person who cut you off in traffic this morning, that's not just some random aggressive driver. That's you when you're running late to your kid's school play, or that's you when you got bad news and can barely focus on the road. That's you when life feels like it's spinning out of control. And that guy at the coffee shop who was unnecessarily rude, that's you on the day you found out about your parents' illness. That's you when your relationship was falling apart. That's you when you felt like the world was against you. And it goes both ways. The stranger you saw dancing alone to street music, that's you when you got that promotion. That's you when you fell in love. That's you when you finally overcame that challenge you thought would break you. The people whose views make your blood boil, the ones you think are absolutely completely wrong, destroying the world, they're showing you something too. They're reflecting back your own unexamined fears, your unconscious biases, your hidden doubts. When someone's political views trigger intense anger in you, ask yourself, what are they reflecting back? Maybe Maybe the fear of change is showing you your own fear of stability. Maybe their aggressive certainty is reflecting your own hidden doubts. Maybe their need to control is showing you where you feel out of control. This is not about agreeing with everyone or accepting harmful or terrible behavior. It's about recognizing that every strong reaction you have to others is showing you something about yourself. Every judgment, every frustration, every moment of righteous anger is an opportunity to see yourself more clearly. I want you to think about the last time you felt really triggered by someone. And for a lot of you, that was my live a week ago. Really angry, really frustrated, really convinced that they were wrong. And now imagine that person is you in a parallel life, born into different circumstances, given different information, shaped by different experiences, because in a very real way, they are. This is not just some philosophical idea, it's a practical tool for transformation. When you start seeing everyone as yourself, pushed out into different circumstances, judgment turns into curiosity, anger turns into understanding, separation turns into recognition. And the most powerful part is you don't have to convince yourself for this to be true. Just try an experiment. The next time someone pushes your button, ask yourself, if this person is me in a different circumstance, what are they showing me about myself? Watch how that simple question changes everything. I want to talk about breaking through, really breaking through these artificial walls that we built. I know that these are just words, but this is an activation so that when you leave this, you're going to understand and believe in this unity, and it will overtake you, and you will see beyond the artificial walls that you have. And how can we break those down? Understanding is not enough. We need to live this truth. We start with something that might feel impossible right now, seeing yourself in your political opposite, not their opinions, not their views, but their core humanity. When they speak with absolute conviction about their beliefs, recognize that the same conviction that you feel about yours is that same conviction. When they fear the direction of the country, recognize your own fears. Just point it out in a different direction. When they fight to protect what they love, recognize your own fierce instinct to protect what you love. Look at the generation gaps that seem so vast. When older people resist new technology or social change, see your own resistance to things that feel like they're moving too fast. When younger people push against traditional systems, see your own yearning for a world that matches your ideals. That grandparent that's struggling with an iPhone is you struggling with whatever will be in 30 years. That teenager rolling their eyes at your advice is you when you thought you knew everything. Cultural differences, they're just different expressions of the same human needs. When someone's customs seem strange to you, remember how natural your own customs feel. When someone's food seems unusual, remember how comforting your familiar dishes are. The way they celebrate, mourn, and pray and love, it's all you. Just wearing different clothes, speaking different words, moving to different rhythms. Even in conflicting belief systems, The unity is there if you look deeper. The person with religious beliefs seems completely opposed to yours. They're seeking meaning just like you. They're trying to make sense of this vast universe just like you. They're reaching for something bigger than themselves just like you. Here's a practical way that we can break through. Next time you encounter someone who seems completely other, play a game with yourself. Find three things you have in common, not surface things, but deep human experiences. Maybe you both have known loss. Maybe you both have felt like an outsider. Maybe you both have lain awake at night wondering if you're doing the right thing with your life. The breakthrough happens when you realize that unity isn't something that we need to create. It's something that we need to stop blocking. It is our natural state. It is who we are. It's who we've always been throughout the history of the universe. All these differences we think are so important, they're like different costumes in the same play, different instruments in the same orchestra, different colors in the same light. I know that you've been told about an evil cabal in the background, but guess what? That evil cabal is you. There is no other. Think about water for a moment. It can be a wave, it can be a cloud, an ice cube, steam rising from your coffee, different forms, same essence. That's us, all these apparent differences. Political views, generational gaps, cultural expressions, belief systems. They're just different forms of the same human essence. This is not about erasing differences, it's about seeing through them. That was always there. It's about recognizing the very things that we think separate us are actually just different expressions of our shared humanity. When you really get this and really live this, you'll never be able to fully believe in a separation again. How do we integrate this? I want you to just try to catch yourself in judgment, something I've been working on for the last week. You're scrolling through your social media, you feel a familiar surge of irritation or superiority. That's your cue. That's your wake up call. The moment you feel yourself hardening against someone, that's your signal to pause, not to suppress the judgment, but to use it as a doorway to recognition. Ah, there I am, showing up in a different form. When I mentioned the oneness last week, a lot of people didn't understand what I'm saying. So I'm trying to clarify. In business, that difficult climate isn't just being difficult. They're you when you feel unheard or worried about getting your value for your money. That competitor is not your enemy. They're pursuing your dreams just from a different angle. That employee who seems resistant to change, they're just trying to protect what works in their world. Family dynamics is where we learn about this. This is where it really gets real. Your teenager's rebellion, that's your own fight for independence playing out in a new form. Your parents' overprotectiveness is just your own deep love and fear of loss wearing a different mask. The sibling who pushes all your buttons, they're reflecting parts of yourself you're still learning to accept. In our community, every interaction becomes an opportunity for recognition. That neighbor with the opposing political sign in their yard, replace the mental label of opponent with mirror. They're not your enemy. You're caring about your community, you're seeing it through a completely different lens. That person arguing at a town hall meeting, they're you passionate about making things better, just with a different version of what better looks like. And yes, it can be ridiculous and unreal, frustrating, agonizing. And some of the things we see ourselves saying out there is shocking and horrible and frightening. Before you go on social media and type that angry response, pause. Before you share that post that demonizes another group, pause. Ask yourself, is this person me in a different circumstance? What are they showing me about myself? What if their post is revealing my own fears, my own unhealed parts, my own unexamined beliefs? In every conflict, in every moment of tension, look for connection, not on the surface, but in the deeper human experience. Someone's angry, connect with the times that you felt unheard. Someone's defensive, remember when you felt threatened. Someone's being rigid, recall when you felt scared of change. When you're in a business meeting and feel resistance rising, that's your cue. When you're in a family dinner and feel judgment building, that's your cue. This isn't about being passive and accepting harmful behavior, because I'm sure I'm going to get comments about that. I'm not telling you to accept anything. It's just responding from a unity consciousness instead of a separation consciousness. It's about recognizing that the person across from you, whether they're a family member, a colleague, a stranger, is just another you trying their best from where they stand. They have completely different experiences and live within their own information chamber. Start small, start with one interaction today, just one moment where you can catch yourself, pause, and shift from judgment to recognition, then another tomorrow, and another the next day. This is how transformation happens, not in one dramatic moment, but over time. We can break through to unity. And there's a ripple effect. Authentic connections will start to emerge naturally when we focus on this. Not forced, not fake, not because you should, but because the walls that you've been building that you were blocking other people simply aren't there anymore. And it's like finally taking off the sunglasses you didn't even know you were wearing. Everything becomes clear, more real. Everything. When something deeper starts happening, these prejudices you didn't know you've had start feeling uncomfortable, like clothes that you've outgrown. Not because you're trying to be politically correct or because someone told you to change, because you literally can't maintain prejudice against yourself. And when you truly recognize yourself in others, those artificial barriers don't make sense anymore. Think about what this means in real terms. That demographic you used to unconsciously avoid, suddenly they're just people, different versions of you walking around. That accent that used to make you cringe, that made you assume things about someone's intelligence, it becomes just another way you might have learned to speak in different circumstances. Authentic connections will emerge naturally, not forced. This is how communities start to heal, not through grand gestures or forced unity, but through this moment by moment recognition. One person sees through the illusion of separation, then another, then another. Those artificial divides that seem so solid, they start dissolving, not because we're trying to break them down, because we finally see that we're never real in the first place. Suddenly, solutions that seemed impossible start emerging because you're no longer invested in proving the other side wrong. When you recognize yourself in them, entirely new possibilities are going to open up. This is how real change happens. You become a walking invitation for others to step out of separation consciousness without preaching, without pushing, just by being someone who sees through the illusions. Your simple act of recognition becomes a permission slip for others to do the same. This is how we transform our world, not by waiting for some big external change from a government or some political party, but by being this change. Interaction by interaction, moment by moment, breath by breath, recognition by recognition, because once enough people are living from this truth, the old patterns of separation simply can't sustain themselves anymore. And that is what they're afraid of. They will continue to divide us and pigeonhole us. You cannot get mad about someone's political beliefs. You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know what they understand or know. Everyone is coming from their own echo chamber. And yes, it's difficult because some of this stuff is frightening and it's scary. And I understand. I'm going to have some interviews on some podcasts. I'm going to openly talk about this stuff from my own perspective, but it's only meant to be from my own perspective. It's not meant to criticize anybody, to insult anybody. I want this to be an open space where you can talk to me and I will listen, and I can talk to you and you will listen. I come from the world of debate. I was a debater through college, and I was forced to debate a topic from both sides. We might debate abortion and I would debate for or against. And what I found when you do that, when you step outside of the argument and look at it, it changes the way you think. And I miss those times because we have become so identified with our arguments, with our politics. You can make this difference. You can change. And I'm calling upon you. We're at a moment of choice. You've seen the illusion of separation. It's manufactured, it's maintained, importantly, to divide us. And so I'm calling upon you for the next 24 hours to pick the person who triggers you the most right now. Maybe it's a political figure. Maybe it's that colleague who gets under your skin. Maybe it's a family member you've stopped talking to. Hold them in your mind and ask yourself this question: is this person, if this person is me in a different circumstance, what are they showing me about myself? It's a powerful question. Don't try to change your feelings about them. Don't try to agree with them. It may be impossible. Don't try to fix anything. Just hold that question. Let it work on you. If this person is me in a different circumstance, what are they showing me about myself? Watch what happens. Watch what happens when we do this. Watch what happens to your internal landscape when you sit with that. And tomorrow, pick someone else. And the next day, another. Make this your practice every time you feel that trigger of separation, that surge of judgment, that flare of righteousness. Use it as your alarm clock. Wake up into recognition. Imagine what becomes possible when enough of us do this. Imagine if just our group, the people that are watching this right now, imagine what would happen. You don't have to take on the whole world. You don't have to fix everything. Just start with one person in the next 24 hours. Start with one trigger, one judgment, one habitual separation. Let that be your entry point into this new way of seeing. Because here's the truth: the world doesn't change when we try to change others. It changes when we stop believing in separation. It changes when we recognize ourselves in each other so completely that division becomes impossible to maintain. That recognition is available right now. That choice is available right now. That transformation begins the moment you decide to see through the illusion. A lot of people were triggered when I mentioned the law of one because I've read all the quote teachings to you guys. And when I mentioned my own belief in the way that the law of one describes the politics of the moment. And so I might have been wrong, but the key element from the law of one and the quote teachings is that when we enter into a new earth, we have unity. A certain group has so much unity, they become a living social memory complex. And there is no way that we can reach that social memory complex and harvest into a new earth if we all are divided and separate. And so forces that don't want the new earth to come about are going to do everything in their power to divide us because they know what happens when we come together. We literally form an entire living being. We enter into the Akashic and we join together. And it doesn't matter what we believed before, because when we go deep and we understand previous incarnations and the instructions we gave prior to this on incarnation and how we grew up, the places we grew up, the news that we watch, the information that we have, all of those things start to enter into our understanding of each other, and we enter into a oneness. And it doesn't matter what our politics are. Can we reach a point where you can join with someone who has completely opposite politics, something that bothers you, something that disgusts you, but still you can recognize yourself in it and we can still find unity? I'm saying that we can. We can change the world. Can you please take this challenge with me? Put it in the comments. Tell me what happens when you try this. I'm begging you. Remember the moment I mentioned at the very beginning, that split second when you catch a stranger's eye and something strange happens? Let me tell you what that moment really is. It's reality breaking through the illusion. It's unity reminding you what you always known, because that recognition that you feel, that's not just random connection, that's coincidence. That's the truth leaking through all our carefully constructed walls. That's unity consciousness breaking through separation consciousness. Every time you feel that recognition, every time you catch that glimpse of yourself in another, maybe it's in the chat right now, you're feeling a connection to someone else. You're not discovering something new. You're remembering something ancient from the beginning of your soul, from the beginning of time. You're remembering what you've always known, what we've always known underneath all our forgetting. There is no stranger, there is no other, there is only you experiencing itself in endless variations. That person you're going to encounter tomorrow who seems so different, so separate, so repugnant, so other, that's just you. Wearing a different mask, living a different story, playing a different part in this grand experience. The division you feel, that's the illusion. The recognition you feel, that's the truth. And I want you to remember the one thing I want you to take from our time together, the moment you think that you found someone who has nothing in common with you, that's the moment you're closest to discovering yourself in a new form. Because in the end, unity is not something that we create, it's what's left when we stop maintaining this separation. Look for yourself in others. You will always find me there. So I want you to at least take what I've said. I know that many of us are in our own boxes, in our own worlds, talking about politics. And there's some interesting statistics that have come out about news usage. The people that voted for Trump and the people that voted for Kamala Harris were all completely and entirely different realms of information. And as I've talked to people in this particular situation, as I've tried to talk to them, I realized we're just coming from completely different places. And I cannot judge them because I'm judging them based on the information that I have. And once we share information, suddenly I'm understanding that we're completely making our judgments on completely different sets of information. The more and more the algorithm separates us, we become completely different. Our realities become different. And so it's important to realize that a lot of these political arguments that we're having are irrelevant. We've been placed into this illusion for a much greater purpose. And if we can overcome this moment, I know that it's frightening and I know that people are scared and I can feel that fear. And that's why I addressed this originally. I'm asking you to use your imagination for us to come together. Let's imagine a future. One thing that really concerns me, I see liberals and Democrats say, "Oh, you're going to just regret voting for Trump. The world's going to be terrible." And I see them actively imagining terrible things happening because then their argument will be proved right. You cannot be this way. We have to continue imagining a positive future no matter who is the president. So it has to be a good thing. If Donald Trump turns out great, it's because of our imagination, not Donald Trump. We together are imagining a better future. So if you're imagining bad things because the president that you wanted didn't win, I understand where you're coming from because it's frustrating and scary what's happening. But you still have agency in this situation. And together, we have a great deal of agency. And if we can imagine a positive future where we're thriving and prosperous and peaceful, it doesn't matter what he said. It doesn't matter what is being done. Together, we have the power to change this reality. I believe when we come together in groups like this and imagine for a future that we can do amazing and wonderful things. And I'm calling upon you to hear my voice, to hear this out. I love you and I care about you deeply. Now, last time I wanted to answer some questions, but it's kind of hard for me to go through all the comments and find questions. So I'm starting fresh, and so I'm happy to to answer some questions. The chapter actually, if you want a copy of my book, I will send a copy, signed copy to you. If you can, if you're in here and I'll see you, then I'll send you a signed copy. I'll to one person that asks a good question. If you can still get a hold of me and I can find your address, you can reach me through Facebook, through my email. I'm happy to send you. I want to send you a copy. This for some reason I didn't know why I was writing this book. I have a number of topics in here, and as I'm reading this book is addressing what's happening now. I had somebody that said, "Hey Brian, that book's not as deep as your first book," and that was the point. My first book was too deep, it was too academic. I wanted to create something that spoke to the heart. And I ended up creating a number of chapters in here that are addressed to this moment. One in particular is my chapter on distortions. This particular chapter, I really want you to read. It's important to me because once you read the chapter on distortions, my argument is that you're limiting your power because of these distortions. You might see you might see a crazy post where a Democrat says something completely insane. That does not mean all Democrats are insane. That is a distortion. There are a number of distortions that we have in our thinking that create this separation. So I'm wanting you to read the chapter on distortions. I also have an episode that I've addressed on cognitive distortions. These distortions mean that does not mean that anything is wrong with you. It's because the environment that we've been placed into. So let me see if anybody has a question. And if you have a question that I can answer, I'll do my best. I will send a copy Sure, Sim, if nobody else wants a copy, you're the first one to ask. Okay, a Brooklyn girl question. What would be the most important action I could take to create more unity, also stay in my power, not get into the fray? So, thank you for asking that question. I'm saying that the worst thing we can do is spiritually bypass and ignore this situation. When we do that, we allow the dissension from others to fester. I'm saying that you are an active agent in this process. Pick out somebody else that is triggering you right now, that you're angry with, that you feel that is the other, that you judge. And I'm asking you just to sit with, if this person is me, I want you to sit with it. Why would I be this way? You will get answers and you will find a connection. Try that. All right. And if you have an opportunity when you're out and about, acknowledge the other, look them in the eye, and just really start to interact on a physical level. Something that they talk about in the most recent quote channelings and in others. One of the things that really allows for the new earth to come together is for people to come together in groups, which is why the pandemic was so terrible, is because we all got separated into quarantines, and we've gotten used to our DoorDash being delivered to our house and never leaving our house. So what I'm saying is, if you can go out and participate in groups and interact with other people, I know that there are people out there that don't like to do that, but when you have those connections and you start to talk to people, don't ask about their politics, don't judge them, just get to know people on a physical level. That's something that you can do, and I find it to be very effective. All right, another question. Jen asks, question, best way to diffuse polarity with people who see things the complete opposite from you. Jen, the first thing to do is to listen. Do not come to that particular interaction as if you know everything. Acknowledge that you might not know everything. And there has to be a little part of you that says maybe they know something, and then listen to them. What they say might be ridiculous and disgusting, but listen to them. If you give them the space to listen, then it will help. Now, one thing that frustrates me, and I'm not saying that it's just on one side, but are the trolls, the ones that want to create dissension. They're not in unity consciousness. I'm trying to understand them. I'm trying to understand why somebody would want to go into a conversation and troll that conversation to create dissension, anger, frustration. Why is it so many people are angry online? So I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to try to put myself in those shoes. One thing that I find that's frustrating right now in this moment, you can't assume everybody that you're interacting with online are real humans. You're interacting with bots that are purposely meant to divide us. So be careful when you're in these social media interactions, and try to identify humans where you can have an authentic connection. Listen to them, give them space, respect and honor them no matter where you're coming from. And you might find some common ground at some point. There's no guarantees, but at least it's a starting point. All right. Another question. So Rock and Sim are want a copy of the book, and so does I need to figure out a way. I have one copy available. I will choose somebody and call it out, and then I can have somebody send me their address. Um, Wake up to yourself. What is your heartfelt motivation and wish for writing this book? My wish in writing this book is to awaken people to their unlimited power within. I was always struck by those amazing New Thought books from the past that really spoke to my heart, that were evergreen, that you could read them 1,000 years from now. And I wanted to create something like that because I felt like that was missing right now for the books that are being created. And I also have the ability to use hypnotic language in my writing so that I could create something that isn't just a book you're reading for educational purposes, but that can literally viscerally affect you. And I wanted to create a book that could do that, to activate. So when somebody reads this, they can feel the power suddenly being activated. And that was the purpose and intention of my book. Yes, Todd, thank you. I have faith that everything will be fine. I always have faith. I am also an active agent in making things fine, not just sitting back. And I'm playing a role in trying to make the world a better place. Question from Diana Novello. I feel if we are loving towards all, we can break down blocks and being able to listen and understand about why we feel, how to how we think and what we do maturely. I agree with that. Sure, absolutely, 100%. Alice, question. I'm struggling because I live work in the US. These are countries dropping bombs on my country, Lebanon. I'm feeling angry every day. How do I navigate this? Alice, I understand your frustration, and it's scary to see when you see nation states taking part of this process and bombs being dropped, and I understand where you're coming from. But I would recommend that you don't take the agency and actions of the government and apply it to the country that you're living in. Those are the actions of the government that are being taken. It doesn't mean that everybody in that country believes in those things. Try to keep things locally, try to keep things within your own environment. When you go to work, you're dealing with those people that you work with. You don't treat them like they're just Americans that are dropping bombs on you. This is something that's happening outside of you. You try to imagine your light and love entering into this situation to resolve it. I have a new quote channeling that I read where they address the conflict in the Middle East and how to deal with that spiritually. And I highly recommend that. I should be able to have it by Sunday. And they talk about the conflict in the Middle East. And it's frustrating and it's scary. And there's some hopelessness when we have a discussion of these things. It's hopeless when I see countries like Russia destroying Ukraine and bombs being dropped in Gaza and bombs being dropped in Africa and conflicts everywhere. And we've always had this. And it's very hard to deal with when it's your own country and you see this happening because it's scary. You see your family being hurt and it feels helpless and it's frustrating and you want to blame someone and it's easy to blame. Understand that the bombs being dropped in Lebanon are not the United States. It may be enabled by the policies of the United States, and you want to be careful about then demonizing everybody in the United States or any particular group politically because of their actions. There are nuances and complexities to this. And ask yourself, why would I bomb myself in this situation? It's a very difficult thing to come to grips with. A lot of times when we see bombs being dropped, they're coming out of fear. Somebody's dropping that bomb because they're fearful something's going to happen for themselves. That fear comes from love. They love their family and they're worried that their family is going to be hurt. And so we need to find a way to dissolve these walls that happen. And the more and more we enter into unity consciousness, we will see that reflected in these conflicts. More and more people will start to awaken to the fact that they can move beyond these terrible divisions that we've had. So we can work on ourselves first, locally with ourselves. And I believe that we can make a difference in the world. But as we're always taught by all these channeled entities, by all these masters, the first step is to go within, not to be afraid. Don't let the fear or anger affect you. Try to move outside of that and try to enter in a way. How can I bring love to this moment? I'm going to send love to this situation and try to actively continue in this loving vibration. It's a tough situation and I'm so sorry you feel that way. And and my heart hurts. My heart is broken when I see that. And I'm sorry, it frustrates me because I see myself getting bombed. I see myself getting hurt. And I don't want to see that. And maybe we can wake up someday in a world where we see ourselves in these environments. We won't how could we ever hurt ourselves when we look at it this way? All right. Um Jessica is saying, I think you do not have to invite people into your personal space unless you are of loving, pure vibration. Yes, you can. You don't just because you're trying to unite and have a loving vibration. It doesn't mean you have to hang out with these people. It can help, but I'm not saying that you need to go and hang out with people that you disagree with. But you can start to understand the division that you had, the way that you compartmentalize people and label them. And there's the process is just the first story that you're telling yourself and the divisions that you create within yourself. Tapestry has a great point. I've seen the feeds of my friends and family and understood at a deep level how we're fed what we focus on. I applaud you and your courage. Thank you, Vocal Tapestry. And yes, it's really amazing if you go and look at somebody and the feeds that they're reading. If you go and talk to somebody that you disagree with, and you were to sit down and read through their social media feed, and you start to understand it may not be their belief, but what they're actively being told over and over and over again. And then the more you focus on this, the more you get it, and it's maximized in so many ways. Um, Hess says people take advantage of each other in various groups, often cowardly ways during times of peace. More often than not, to support peace and love is also to turn a blind eye to subjugation. I agree with that. We are not turning a blind eye to subjugation. One of the great mistakes throughout history is that people have tried to be peaceful and nice. They've been walked on and taken advantage of. And I am not saying to do that. I'm saying that the first step for us to avoid subjugation is to recognize ourselves, that we can be active agents. We're I absolutely agree with you that why is it that groups that are generally trying to be nice end up being dominated and manipulated and controlled? This is something that has happened throughout history. Right now, we can move beyond that because of the power that we have. The power we have allows us to avoid subjugation. When we embrace the power of our imaginations and we come together, co creating a different reality, that power breaks the bonds and we can overcome this subjugation. It doesn't mean that we have to be nice and be walked on. We can stand up for ourselves and still be agents of love. But this is a quandary that's important. It's important what you said. And I think we need to talk about it more and more because even they talk about it in the law of one channelings. The service to others doesn't like conflict. And so oftentimes the service to self walks all over them. And so there's an element when they move into fifth density, a certain group of people have to accept this sort of mind war that's going on. And they can't do it in the sixth density. Once you reach a certain level of unity consciousness, it's impossible. So it is a struggle. I understand that it is a struggle to embrace this unity consciousness and at the same time not get walked on because you see peace and love. This has always been the case. I'm saying that we come into our power when we are together and we are not subjugated. We use this power to overcome anything. And it's hard to believe. I'm saying that the power of us imagining and working together in love will overcome subjugation and domination. Hess says, I can't honestly say that I'm pro war as I haven't served yet, but it's important to know what side one ought to stand on, whether the time comes. It's frustrating to talk about because there are times in our history when war has created a greater peace. When you look at World War II, there was no choice. If we had not gone to war with Germany, we would be controlled by Germany and Japan right now. So there's an element to war when you're trying to stop fascism or something that's terrible that's happening. So when people say I'm anti-war, so then are you okay to be walked on, walked all over? This is a constant conflict. And one of the great things that we learn is anytime there's this sort of contradiction in spirituality, that's the place where we can really start to understand this. I believe that we are going to reach a level of consciousness slowly over time where we have enough power that's stronger than bombs, that we can actually see the instant manifestations that are involved. And when we do it together, we can manifest a world of peace if we come together. We are not there yet, but we're working towards it. All right, let's see. Any other questions? I changed my name here to this from Wake Up to Yourself says I changed my name here to this from Hanging with Maggie. Thank you for telling us. It's good to see you. Anna Divine says, are we at a critical mass, the awakening? My higher self has been guiding me through this time. I strongly feel like I'm here as an agent in this process of us moving into a great awakening. And I believe that the election was a fulcrum point in our awakening. The awakening is when we come into oneness. And so this may be a catalyst for us to come into the oneness, or it may be a catalyst for us to divide into otherness. And so we are at an important point. We are at the brink of a major change. We are making a choice as to what world that we want to be in. I'm calling for a world that moves beyond politics, that embraces our divine nature for who we truly are. And it's more important for us to recognize that we are all divine and powerful than for us to be right politically. And so I'm hoping to be an agent. I know it's a small little group with only a few people watching right now, but I'm calling upon you to move beyond the divisions that we have in the world towards unity. I'm calling upon you to recognize the love in your heart, to be an agent of love and to recognize that we are all agents of love and we can to come together no matter what our viewpoints are. We all generally want the same thing: peace, love, happiness, prosperity in our world. Yes, I agree, Jessica. Let's dance. So I think that I hopefully made my point. This has been an activation. You are now activated for unity. This is going to come to your mind, and I want you to recognize it. I want you to recognize when you've been triggered by this otherness, to understand the way that divisions have been created with you, to understand the world is designed to separate us by the color of our skin, by our gender, by our culture, by our state, by our city, by our football team, by our basketball team. It's everything is designed to constantly divide us. I want you to be aware of it. And I want you to realize that we are more than that, that we are all as a group one, and we can come together as one. As I always say, you can find all episodes of the Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. I love you. Thank you. Your donations are very helpful for me. I do want to say that the channel is struggling right now, and I hope it changes. Maybe it's a YouTube thing. I want to continue to do this. I want to continue doing these YouTube videos. I want your support. If you continue to enjoy my videos, please watch them. And I want to produce more audiobooks for you and do more meditations. Please join with me. If there's something that you're struggling with, let me know and maybe I can work on it. If you want coaching, please contact me. I have openings for coaching and something that I really love to do. And if there's any other suggestions, please join my Facebook group. You can join my Reddit group. You can join me on MeWe, on Twitter. You can join me on Facebook. You can join me on a bunch of different social media places. I try to put myself out there. I'm doing my very best. I may not be able to respond to all your messages, and I love you, and I thank you for the opportunity to be a voice in this process. And I ask you simply to move beyond the fact that I have a certain political belief. It may not be the same as yours. I'm only asking you to give me a chance. I have not changed. There's nothing that's changed about me, and that we all have more in common, that we are a soul family, that the majority of our group actually have been particularly linked together for a long time, and they still want to divide us. We're a family. We must stay together. So please find ways to reach for common ground. I've learned some lessons over the last week. People that I was frustrated with or blocked, you know what? I was wrong. And I had come away from understanding that I need to find more common ground, and I'm going to work on it. And I love you guys, and I will talk to you soon, and be sure to check out my episodes this week. And I love you with all my heart. I will send a book to Sim if you're still here. You're the first one that asked for the book that I recognized. And so, Sim, if you can reach out to me somewhere or come into the next video, you can email me at chiefexecutiveprime@gmail.com, and I will send you a signed copy of the book. In any case, love you all, and I'll talk to you soon.